Good afternoon, everyone. Let's call to order the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust meeting of April 9th, 2024. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of March the 26th, 2024. Are there any changes, suggestions, questions? Then I'd entertain a motion, please. Got a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. It passes. We next turn to the consent docket. Today we find 11 items on the consent docket. There's awarding contracts, amendments and change orders, addendums to contracts and pricing agreements, and some open market purchases. Would anyone like to pull any of these items for a discussion or an individual vote? All right, I entertain a motion to approve the consent docket. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passes. All right, now we are on to the concurrence docket. There's nothing today there. Emergency construction contracts, there's nothing there. So we'll turn to item 6, items for individual consideration. We have 4 items. The first one is a final engineering report for a dewatering system improvements that were made at Hefner Water Treatment Plant. Do we need to have any discussion or any presentations on that?
Mr. Vice Chairman, this is just an update or an upgrade of the system that we use to pump the groundwater from around these structures. We had an engineering evaluation, and the report recommends some modifications to the system, and we'd be happy to answer questions if you may have, if anyone has any.
If no one has any questions, I'll entertain a motion in a second for item 6B. Excuse me, 6A. Please vote. It passes. Now we'll go to item 6B, which is an amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement pertaining to the operation, maintenance, and repair services for Tinker Air Force Base.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Paul Reckbos from Guernsey will give you a brief summary.
Hi, Rick. How are you today?
Paul.
Oh, Paul. I'm sorry. Hi, Paul.
Paul Reichbos with Guernsey. I'm the program manager for the trust efforts at Tinker Air Force Base. Today's amendment is to adjust the Inframark contract to operate the water wastewater systems at Tinker because of some mission growth and changes to the mission at Tinker. We've seen a lot more need for their services. So this will add 3 FTE for individuals to operate as another crew on base for emergency repairs, weekend work, and evening work. The base has frequently requested off-hour work, and that has put us behind on preventative maintenance, so we would like to add crews for that. It also simplifies their contract administration, so currently they are allowed to have an annual adjustment of their rates based off of a blended CPI, ECI, and PPI calculation, and this just simplifies it into a CPI calculation, so it's a lot easier to administer. We did a comparison over the last few years, and it would almost be the exact same rate that it has been, so they were amenable to that change. And it also adjusts the start date of their contract annually by 1 month to coincide with the start date of Aquit's contract with the federal government.
So the amendments to provide for additional maintenance, repairs, operations.
Correct. Yep.
At Tinker.
Additional staff. Yep.
Right. Any questions, anyone? Or do you have any comments, sir?
No comment.
All right. I'll entertain.
Just to be clear, then we take that extra amount back to the feds, right?
Correct. So yeah, we have a rate adjustment process that we'll be going through and asking their permission before we actually add that staff.
Great. Thank you.
All right, now entertain a motion on item 6B at this time. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. It passes. We'll now move on to item 6C, which is the management agreement with the City of Oklahoma City to maintain radio-controlled model aircraft operations at Lake Hefner Reservation.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, C and D are connected, so I'll explain the item.
Okay.
C is an ordinance change, or D is an ordinance change related to C. So we have two model airplane fields, one at Draper, one at Hefner. The one at Draper is under a management agreement, and the one at Hefner is not. It's under a permit that has expired. So we have negotiated terms with the Torx Group, that's the airplane group at model airplane group at Hefner, to put them under a management agreement similar to the one at Draper. And this also would include permit fees, where we collect those fees. And those were developed based on what this organization said it would cost to maintain and operate their facilities. When we collect the fees, they're entitled to get back 90% of those fees for the operation and maintenance. So they're not the same as Draper. They're a little different, but it's based on what their organization said it would take to operate and maintain their functions there at Hefner. So,
Can we get Todd to test the aircraft?
sure, we'll sell him a permit. So anyway, C is the agreement, and D is the ordinance
All right.
that will be presented to council for
So
consideration.
let's first take up item 6C, which is the management agreement. I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. It passes. We'll move on now to 6D, which is the ordinance. I'll also entertain a motion for that. So, there we go. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. It passes. We now go to items from trustees. Any items from any of the trustees today? We next go to one of my favorites, the general manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Two items, they're both updates on major projects. We want to give you all quarterly updates on the South Canadian Wastewater Treatment Facility and the Atoka Pipeline. So Will Huggins is here to talk about the South Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman, trustees. Let's see. So normally you would get Joy Cote, the project manager, but she's off recovering from shoulder surgery. So I'm going to try and stand in her shoes today, give you an update on what's going on at the large improvements at South Canadian. So just a reminder, the existing plant is reaching the end of its useful life. So there's several facilities and treatment processes that need to be updated. We're going to increase the treatment capacity from 6 to MGD to 8.6 MGD. We're also going to include some enhancements to the treatment so it can comply with the new regulatory requirements with regards to the effluent, and also just optimize the plant to current standards. Just a little background, I think you've seen this slide a couple times. The engineer is CP&Y, doing business as STV. The contractor is Crossland Heavy Contractors. Construction costs after the value engineering is around a little over $191 million. It's a big number to get out. So it's a 54-month project, which is long. At about the 48-month mark, we should come, the 42-month mark, we should actually come on to a lot of the new treatment processes being online, the actual new plant, the new effluent, and then there's about a 12-month period where we're going to be demoing the old plant and restoring the plant. So right now we're tracking pretty well as of April 1st. We're about 33% spent in terms of dollars and around 37 in terms of time complete. So tracking well in terms of getting work done. Just a quick kind of brief bullet point on looking behind the last 90 days. Made a lot of headway on the aeration basin structure. It's a large concrete structure. I'll show you some pictures on that progress later on. We've also started the final segment of the 54-inch effluent pipe, and including installing a new head wall that's actually out in the river. Started pouring base slabs for the clarifiers, and then there's several new structures that started that we'll give you an update on at the next quarterly meeting, a quarterly update. So looking ahead, we're projecting to complete the actual concrete structure for the aeration basin. We plan to do the roofing for the admin building and continuing the rough in and interior finishing. We're going to complete the outfall head wall and effluent pipe, And then we're also do the main slabs and walls of the clarifiers. With that, I'll kind of show some pictures and try to do it in a timeline format. You can kind of see how the project's progressed. So this just shows the evolution of the admin building, which will house the offices for staff, where they can meet, training, in general, like controls of the actual plant. This is a headwork structure. It's a new influent headworks. This just shows it progressing from August to April. This right here is the actual influent channel. There'll be 2 bar screen mechanisms located here, one here, and then this is the effluent. So as we progress, you'll start to see equipment be added to these pictures. Aeration basin, this one's kind of neat. You can see that it's a rather large structure. If you have a chance to go visit during construction, I'm happy to give you guys a tour. It's really interesting. It's kind of dirty right now, but the next slide is real cool. I want to thank Crossland for sending in this. They actually did a time lapse of construction. I sped it up even more and trimmed it, but this just shows the aeration basin coming up out of the ground from the foundation prep to laying the aggregate base. And then starting about now, you'll start to see concrete pours coming in, the floors, they're bringing up the walls, and they're working along. And so now they've actually started to pour some of the decks from this end down here. They're starting to pour the upper decks, and then they'll finish up the structure over the next 90 days. Oh, not that. Clarifiers, another treatment process. They've done the subsurface improvements, and now they're actually pouring the foundation, and they'll be coming up with the walls. Primary electrical building, it'll kind of be the electrical heart of the plant. It's new, it's a new primary electrical feed, new primary electrical distribution system, and there'll also be generators located there. So they've got the building in place, and they'll actually, assuming that whenever the electrical gear comes in, which is a long lead item, we'll start to see some gear actually come into this building. Disinfection building, this is actually the on-site sodium hypochlorite generation system. We're, as we've talked about before, we're moving away from on-site chlorine gas to on-site generation of a fancy way of saying bleach. So this is just that building coming up out of the ground. You can see we've got some of the chemical tanks already installed and ready. Digester thickener, this facility is used for part of solids handling. We've had the masonry be completed, and they'll start working on the inside as soon as process equipment starts showing up. And with that, just any questions you might have about progress.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well,
Now we go on to 8B.
the next, we will give you an update. Larry Hare will talk about the Atoka pipeline.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, some of
Larry,
these
do you have cool video like that, just building the pipeline?
No, I just have pictures for effect. See how well they are. Some of these things you've seen before. This is the Atoka program in a nutshell. We got several projects lined up that we're trying to get done to bring more water from southeast Oklahoma to the city. We still have about 43 miles of pipe currently under construction out of 98.6 miles. Going to the status of each of the projects coming from the southeast to the northwest, the section between Pump Station O and the Colgate Pump Station, I have 61% of that project installed so far. Moving on to WC 873 between Stonewall and the Ada Pump Station, we now have 24% installed, and they're just going like crazy. WC 874, the segment between Ada and the Canadian River crossing, is pretty much 99% installed, the pipe. They're getting ready to do the connection between the river crossing and their project right here. Speaking of the river crossing, this project is pretty much 100% installed. The McKee Contracting, who is doing the project I previously spoke of, will be doing the interconnection between the new pipelines that Vadnais has installed, and we're gearing up for this to happen on April 22nd. After that's done, we can turn off the aerial crossing going across the river and resume service in the original Atoka pipeline shortly thereafter. 877, the project between the Conoway Pump Station and about halfway to Macomb, pipe delivery began late in March of this year. So soon they will begin construction, pretty much right after they get done with the connection at the river crossing. It's the same contractor. Other projects coming up next would be Pump Station O, which would be the main pump station to start bringing water through the new pipeline, as well as the Colgate to Stonewall stretch and from the river crossing to the Conoway Pump Station. And we take any questions you may have.
Any questions, anyone? Looks like we were making progress.
We're moving right along.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
We, Amy, have any citizens to be heard today? We find ourselves at Roman numeral 10, adjournment. We are adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
Great job.
Now I can catch my flight.
Get after it.